people will get prescribed Midodrine, but without any counsel on blood pressure, because most people that are prescribed it with POTS have normal blood pressure. But the point is to increase and normalize the blood pressure. But what we're actually saying is if someone's blood pressure is normal in their body, but not in their brain, there's a disconnect there. Midodrine just kind of being flung blindly. You can tell it hasn't been thought about. It was just kind of done because it's the protocol and we just boot you out. Sarah Adams said, do you feel like you get accurate information from testing if they're already on a med like Midodrine, or do you have them off the meds to do the testing? So most autonomic testing, tilt testing, the gold standard is to not be on meds. That's the gold standard. For sometimes that's not feasible. It's preferable, but sometimes it's not feasible. And then we just say, the other way to look at it then would be, okay, if someone's walking around on this drug all day and then they still are positive for all of these things, then we know that like we still have a problem we have to solve. So then we will figure out how to do a workaround. So like, okay, we're on Midodrine. We're still got terrible cerebral perfusion. How are we going to solve for this? One of the things that kind of gets me, and I think we did, you can remind me, but I think we did a video this week about it, is there's like a little bit of a frustration with me on Midodrine just because of the logic flow. So the design is, or the declared utility, like the reason we're using it, so to speak, is that someone they have symptoms of low perfusion or low blood pressure, right? Blood pressure in the brain, let's call it. But then people will get prescribed Midodrine, but without any counsel on blood pressure, because most people that are prescribed it with POTS have normal blood pressure. But the point is to increase and normalize the blood pressure. But what we're actually saying is if someone's blood pressure is normal in their body, but not in their brain, there's a disconnect there. So that's actually the problem we're trying to solve. So the Midodrine just kind of being flung blindly starts to get like slightly annoying after a little while, because you can tell it hasn't been thought about. It was just kind of done because it's the protocol and we just boot you out. For other people that it's really useful for are the people where when you look at that blood pressure and you tilt them up, the diastolic number tanks, it drops. And you look at that more neuropathic type firing and you're like, this person actually, even though I might choose not to solve it with Midodrine, that's probably going to be a good solution for them. So I don't like that it's just kind of like pitched at everybody, and for a lot of people where it doesn't really make sense. Sasha says, I was prescribed Midodrine, but the logic behind why I didn't sit well because I have normal blood pressure, didn't take it. This is a good point. I'm also going to give a little bit of add on here because I don't want people to take that and go, and get mad. So the actual really helpful thing to do might be to have that question, have that conversation with them and say, I don't understand. And I don't feel comfortable taking it because I don't understand. Can you help me try to expand? Help me try to understand that. And sometimes people will scoff and they'll blow you off. But if you get a good doctor, they'll sit down and try to talk to you about it. And then if you've got the objectives there and you can say, here's what we're trying to solve, here's how I think this would solve it, here's the time duration I think with which we would use it, and then these are the other things I think we can do to get stronger while we're buying time with this Midodrine. That's probably a pretty reasonable approach. I don't think that's what happens a lot. I don't think we use it as a buying time medication. I think we use it as a kick the can down the road medication. But if you can use it at that, it can be really useful, where you say, we're going to try to run it for this period of time. And in that meantime, I really want you to work on doing these types of exercise, see if we can build a little strength again so that maybe we don't have to use that in the future. This is actually an interesting one. Rainey had asked, I have a friend, and it's obvious to me she also has POTS. When she did her first tilt test, they were confused. The second time, it took 30 minutes for her to show POTS signs. Doctor said it was too long. Why? That's actually a good question. And it's worth going through the logic because then people can understand how you think about it. If it is taking that long to start to yield signs, we should differentiate between signs and symptoms. Signs are things that we can measure, and those are like the testing, the objective things that we're looking at. Those are signs. Symptoms are things that you feel. In this case, you're using the term signs, so I'm going to assume that's what you mean. If it takes 30 minutes to yield them, first of all, I wonder what they are. If that's just the heart rate going up, or if that's like, are we having some blood pressure things get weird, or is breathing getting weird, or is blood flow to your brain getting weird? Because it's a long time to be able to last before things start to kick in. And would eventually show fatigability in that system. These tend to come more with things that are like orthostatic hypotension, generally speaking. Most people with POTS, it doesn't usually take that long, that's been my experience too. That's a long time to wait. But usually there are other things that are happening. A lot of people will notice they have tachycardia. I have tachycardia. This is for sure a thing. We do a tilt test and we see like, actually, like perfusion, that's terrible. We're down like 40%. So that's not great. CO2, that's down quite a bit. That's not great. But also, heart rate, it goes up, but maybe not as crazy as we would think, because we're seeing like it's not taxing as much as it normally would. And like, so those things we do see happen. And these are the ones that used to get told like, yo, you're normal. But being able to look at it with a little more depth into the brain has been helpful. But this is probably somebody that would have slipped right through on those cracks. Is a tilt table necessary to confirm POTS? There's some controversy on this one. So there's actually a published cardiologist that has an interview talking about like, we don't do tilt tests, we don't need to do them, we're going to use the same protocol. And that kind of hits you because you're like, oh man, really? But then if you think about it honestly, like, you probably don't change what you're doing based on that. So to you, I could see why that wouldn't be valuable. In my perspective, to confirm POTS as a diagnosis, all you need to do is be able to see blood pressure and heart rate. Now, so that's like just to get a diagnosis. And then the question is like, how useful is that diagnosis? And this is where I would depart from typical, because I would say like that doesn't help much. So knowing that doesn't tell me how to fix it. And I don't like that. But if we want to know how to fix it, using a tilt table, using Valsalva test, using deep breathing tests, then it actually becomes helpful because you can differentiate between different subtypes, different mechanisms, and develop a game plan for how to solve it. So if all we're trying to do is rule in and out, if we can use an ICD-10 code that says, you know, this person, or I want to be able to write down for my insurance company, POTS is the diagnosis. You can do that with laying down to standing Nasaline style heart rate, blood pressure measurement, and that'll suffice. 10 minutes test. But if you want to like get down to the dirty part and be able to fix it, which I think a lot of people are if you're here, then I don't know that you can do that as well without the tilt table.